silver-scented mystery you wrapped and gave to me. It would not settle quietly, it itched, it tingled to fly free. Like you, it wouldn't linger, put into a box where it just might die. Like you, it left us gazing in wonder as you fell up, through a crack in the sky.
After so many years spent in the world of progressive rock, progressive metal, experimental rock, jazz, jazz fusion, and pop rock, how would you describe your evolution as a musician, as a human being, Mr. Tony Levin?
Well, that's a big question. I'm going to think a lot of that. I don't think I have a preference for which style of music I play. I like a lot of styles, and I'm very comfortable in progressive rock, and I do a lot of progressive rock shows. And it's true, I do try to progress as a player, and I work on my playing, and I practice, and I try new techniques and new things. I'm not saying I always succeed in that, but I try. I find, especially as I get older, it's nice to feel that I'm not playing the same all the time, but that I'm growing as a player. It's a wonderful thing to be in music because you can, through a long career, you can keep trying to grow, not stay the same.
Yes. You started playing in 1956 at the age of 10, and later in 1961, I think, you've played for President John F. Kennedy. It was a remarkable experience for you to play at the White House. What did you play in that day?
Well, I was playing classical music when I was a kid, and I was in a youth orchestra, and the Kennedys liked to bring culture to the White House, so they had us travel down from Boston, the city I'm from, to Washington. It was exciting, a little bit wasted on somebody young, a teenager, so I didn't appreciate it the way I would now, but I got to have dinner at the White House, and I learned what it's like to stand up and have dinner while you're holding your plate and you have no place to sit down. I guess that's the way the diplomats eat at the White House, or did then. And I didn't meet him, I didn't get to shake his hand, but I got to see him walk by, and I got the signed program, so it was pretty special.
Yes. What memories do you have today of your associations with John Lennon? You were one of the last people to play with him.
Yes, I did a group of recording sessions that were turned into 2 albums, Double Fantasy and Milk and Honey both, but really it was, to us, it was 1 album worth of stuff. It was very special. I didn't know him before that, so it was an honor and a musical pleasure to be part of that. And there was going to be a tour. It would have been great. There was going to be a world tour. Of course, I was stricken very hard when he died so suddenly and unfairly, and I had a really many years trying to cope with it myself, but I'm okay now, and it was a great piece of luck for me to be part of that music.
How would you define your long partnership with Peter Gabriel?
Oh, it's been fun. Peter's a very creative individual. He's also a great person as a person, so that's probably through the years my favorite band to tour with and to play concerts with, and I've played with a lot of bands. Because Peter, it's great music, and it's also a lot of fun, and we become like a family on the road, and it's just a great experience. He's inspired me both musically and personally through the years.
Yes. In 1979, you played with Robert Fripp for his solo album Exposure.
Yeah.
Yes, in 1980, you became a member of King Crimson.
Yes.
I suppose it was an important chapter for you to play with Robert Fripp. How it is to play with a guy like Robert Fripp?
Well, it's very interesting. Really, I met him, this is interesting, that I met him in 1976 on Peter Gabriel's first album.
Yes.
So on that one day I met Robert Fripp and Peter Gabriel in 1976, and now in 2014 I'm still playing with both of them, and I'm very happy about that and very lucky.
Yes.
So Robert is a great musician, and he's also a great, his method of having that band, King Crimson, is very special, very different than other bands and other band leaders. So I can say that I'm always learning from him, and especially I learn what the really right way is to have a progressive band and to really be progressive. And it's not easy, and to push yourself as a band and also as individual players to do creative things that you haven't done before. So it's been a good inspiration for me.
How would you define the essence of King Crimson's music?
I think I know better than to try to define it. I think each of us in the band would define it differently, but I would say that the essence of it lies in Robert Fripp's sensibility of what's right for King Crimson and what directions we should go in, and part of being in that band is trusting his sense of what is King Crimson and where it should go, and I have an easy time with that.
Our ceilings and our boundaries, we embrace them, and we wonder why. But you laugh at it all, while falling up, through a crack in the sky.
Anderson, Bradford, Wakeman, Howe. Do you remember what those sessions were like?
That's a long time ago, about 1989, 1990. A lot of fun. I was already very familiar with Bill Bruford because we were in King Crimson together.
Yes.
And I knew John Anderson, had played with him a little bit, but again, I used the word honor before, but I'm going to say again, to step into the band, yes, which I love the band, and I love the bass playing of Chris Squire, and I really have a great respect for the musicians. To step into that band and be able to play the bass part even for one album was very special. It turned out to be a couple of tours and a couple of albums before the band reunited, the real Yes. And even though when they reunited, that was the end of my going out with them, I was still, as a fan, I was glad they reunited. It should be Chris Squire. He's the real bass voice of Yes, and very special. So I had a good time with it.
Every solo album, every Stickman project recordings that you've done represents a good opportunity to expand your musical horizons. Am I right?
I feel that way. I try to expand, and Stickman is our real experimental test ground, because there are only 3 of us, and so it was a big challenge to cover all the music we want, and to try to do Stravinsky and to try to do King Crimson with only 3 guys is a good challenge, and we really value that band as a way to move ahead musically, all 3 of us.
Yes. Mr. Tony Levin, let's talk about Liquid Tension Experiment, that fantastic progressive metal and prog rock project. What prompted you to play with musicians like John Petrucci, Jordan Rudess, and Mike Portnoy, now an ex-member of Dream Theater?
Yeah. The albums came about just because we were asked to do it. I don't really know whose idea it was, but the record company called me and said, "Do you want to make a record with these guys?" And that was a big challenge for me, because those 3 players are really virtuosos on their instrument. And I feel I'm a very good bass player, but I'm not that technically, I can't keep up with them, is the truth. So it was a good challenge, and I didn't try to get them to play slower. I tried to live up to come up to their level. And especially live, when we toured many years later, it was a big challenge for me. I would say I practiced more for that live tour. That tour was only 1 week long, and I practiced more than half a year for just that tour. So it was a good challenge for me, and good to be in the group.
The musicianship was always stellar.
Yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah.
It was great.
Well, sometimes if you're lucky like me and you get called to play in different situations, some of them are easy, or I'll use the word comfortable. I hear it and I say, "Oh, that's what I do well, that's great." And sometimes it's good for me as a player to step out of that and to do something that's not comfortable, that's really outside of my range of what I usually do, and that's what that band was like. And the rewards were good for me. Then the guys were very patient with me while I tried to keep up with them musically, and the reward was big. I feel very good about the music we made together.
What is, in your vision, the essence of Dream Theater's sound? Do you like the band?
I like the band, and I had the chance with our group, the Crimson Project, to tour opposite them. We opened for them for the whole summer, or maybe 2 years ago. It was great. I liked listening to them every night, and I'm not good at describing bands. I'm like most musicians. We're not good at putting things into categories. We just listen fresh to each thing. So I like the band, and especially I like the players in the band.
Yes. Levin, Miniman, Rudess, another great album, another challenging chapter.
Yeah, good challenge. Unusual. I call those projects when you have it's not really a band because you don't have a manager and you don't go out on tour. We hope someday to tour with that, but it's in this case it's three guys. You put your heads together. It's the same as Liquid Tension. You put your heads together and try and write good music, and then the playing, the musicianship is going to be there because you choose good guys. So in that case, I think we got lucky because the good thing about those projects is the playing is going to be good. The hard thing is to get material written that's very meaningful, that's really good material. And that time, I don't know why, but we clicked well together. So I feel very good about the music we wrote for that it's, in a few years, it's still going to sound good. It's not going to sound like these guys just got together for 2 hours and played and wrote something really quick. So in that sense, I think we were lucky, and I think the album's quite special.
How would you describe your musical journeys with Adrian Belew, Pat Mastelotto, Marcus Reuter, Tobias Ralph, and Julie Slick in the Crimson Project?
Well, we've played a lot of shows together, and we use the word Crimson and Crimson Project, and it's an interesting, very unusual group because it doesn't fit into usual categories. Really, it's two groups. It's Adrian Belew's trio plus Stickmen.
Yes.
It's two groups plus a third thing because the six of us together do a lot of King Crimson music, and we don't approach it like King Crimson does. We don't try to take it to new territories. We just play it the way three of us, Adrian and myself and Pat Mastelotto, played so many times live. So I think it's really an interesting show we put on. You get to see three bands in one set, in one place, and we even sometimes do just two of us play a song or four of us. So we do a lot of variations, and we cover a lot of very interesting music, both new and classic King Crimson music.
Yes. You play so many instruments: bass, Chapman stick, synthesizers, tuba. Playing the Chapman stick is a very different musical experience in comparison with the regular bass.
It is. The Chapman stick is a very interesting instrument. I'm going to say I don't really play that many instruments. Most of the guys I know play some guitar and some drums. I'm primarily a bass player, and I have some different shaped basses. And the stick, when I first got the stick, I got it because I played bass notes on it. The stick has, for those who don't know, the Chapman stick has bass strings and guitar strings.
Yes.
And for many years, I'm going to think 10, 15, 20 years, I only played the bass side of it. I didn't play those guitar strings. And eventually, especially in King Crimson and in Stickmen, I began to play like a guitar player. But for instance, in Crimson Project, I don't hardly play the top of the stick at all. So really, I'm using it like it's a bass. It's a very unusual one. It's very percussive because you play it with hammer-on technique. You don't pluck it. And what I like about it, the Chapman stick, is it gives me a different sound than I get on the bass. And the tuning is different, so it gives me different musical ideas. So it helps me to be a more complete bass player than, for me, it's easier to do that if I'm not playing the same instrument on every piece.
You created funk fingers, which are modified drumsticks attached to fingers used to hit the bass strings. How did that come about? I think it was used for the first time on Peter Gabriel's So album.
Yes, I'm very impressed that you know so much about me.
I'm a fan.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you. On the So album, really the Funk Fingers did not come about that. But on the So album, when we recorded the piece Big Time, I asked the drummer, Jerry Murata, to play with his drumsticks on the strings while I did the fingering. And what happened is later when we were touring the next year, I was trying to play that with a drumstick in my hand, and it's actually Peter Gabriel who got the idea. He was walking by me at sound check one day, and as usual I was practicing, and he said, "Why don't you put 2 drumsticks on your fingers?" So that's the genesis of the idea, if I can use that word, and it took a while to get the right shape and the right size, and eventually I gave them a name, Funk Fingers, and I still use them quite a bit. I'll use them in the show tomorrow.
Yes. You played with so many famous artists like Cher, Alice Cooper, Pink Floyd, Dire Straits, Peter Frampton, Bill Bruford, etc. You are exceedingly prolific, contributing heavily to many other people's projects. Do you drive yourself to keep work hard, or does the music just erupt so much that you have to find many ways to busy yourself?
Boy, that's a good question. I'll say one thing, I drink coffee. So that explains a lot. I don't sleep.
A lot, yes.
Yes, I don't sleep so much. And when things are slow, when I'm not being called to play on a lot of things, then that's when I write my music and that's when I do my practicing. And I'm lucky and I'm called a lot to play on famous projects like the ones you mentioned, but I'm also asked to play on a lot of people's albums that you never hear about. And if I like the music, I do that too. I do a lot of recording from home. So I'm a pretty lucky guy. I get to play music that's good, and I get to do it a lot. And if I make a living from it, that's actually a bonus. But I love making music. Like most of the musicians I know, we love making music, and we're lucky to be able to do that with our lives.
What music lifts your spirit?
Oh, any good music. I listen to a lot of styles of music. I still love classical music, which is where I started. I love jazz, and these last few years I've been practicing jazz and playing jazz more and listening to it more. I love jazz of the 1950s, the music that when I was a kid, my older brother, Pete, who's a jazz musician, jazz keyboard player, like any kid, I listened to my older brother's records because he could afford to buy them, and we've recently begun to make an album of that style of the 50s. It's called cool jazz. So anyway, my point is I love a lot of different kinds of music, and if it's good, I even if I haven't heard that style, I like to be exposed to the music and learn from it.
Practically, you've learned the jazz groove with a great drummer many years ago, if I recall well.
Well, I went to school with Steve Gadd,
Yes,
classical
Steve
music
Gadd, yes,
school,
your colleague, yes.
and I began to play jazz then. I liked jazz before that, but that's when I really began to solidify it. And in fact, since I mentioned the Levin Brothers album that's going to come out in September with my brother, I brought Steve Gadd in to play just a couple of tracks on that. Yeah, he's an old friend, a good friend, and he really did teach me my jazz playing.
What have been some of the biggest changes you've seen in music?
I think the biggest change is from the business of selling the music. I don't care so much about that, and I wish I didn't have to know about it, but that changes fast, and it's been changing, and it's going to keep changing. So that changes the way we do everything, the way we do records, and the way we do concerts, and the way we try to sell our music and make a living from it. But the important thing to me isn't that. The important thing is the quality of the music, and that's changed. I think a lot more people are making a lot of music than used to be, and the music from all over. I don't even listen as much as I should, but I hear music from people in all parts of the world that's really good. And it used to be you only would hear what's on the radio or what the record companies chose to release on their records. So in a way, it's better for us listeners, for us lovers of music, that you can accidentally come across something from just the far-flung corners of the world that can inspire you with your own music.
A word about the world we live in.
I'm touring a lot lately and in a lot of places, and I'm very aware that it's getting more difficult and more complex to travel, and that the parts of the world that aren't doing so good are affecting the parts that were doing good before, and economies are struggling. So it's a difficult time. I wish I was wise enough to predict what's going to happen, or even better, what's the solution. But I think times are not so easy, and again, in my experience as a musician, I'm so lucky because my living and the reason I travel is to connect with people, to share something with people. So I'm a little bit removed from the world of business and economies and things, but it's not the easiest time around the world.
Besides the music, what things are important in life to you, Mr. Tony Levin?
Well, I have a lot of interests. I spent most of my time doing music. I'm thinking about it, and the truth is almost all of my friends are musicians, but I'm very close to my family, and I love them and spend time with them, and I like some sports, and I'm like a regular guy, whatever. I like reading a lot. On the road with all this traveling, I get a chance to catch up on my reading and try to learn something about what's going on in the world. It's such interesting stuff. I'm a fan of science. I like reading about science, and when I write songs, sometimes it's about science, even though it's not a love song about science. I know we have one we're doing lately about a super collider.
Yes.
It's an interesting subject for songs. So I have a lot of interests.
Yes. My final question is, after so many successful recordings, albums, tours, how would you describe your journey through music and life?
Wow. I'll try, but it's interesting that I never think about those things except if someone asks me in an interview. Like a lot of musicians, I'm very good at focusing on what I'm doing now. I'm very, not just focused, I get a little bit carried away with the music I'm making on this tour and this week and this month. And I'm not so good at looking back and kind of putting...
not so retrospective.
Exactly, yeah, putting it in perspective, and I'm not good at comparing it to other things. I've had and I also don't feel like, obviously from the question, you've learned a lot about me and you ask me that, so you see me as someone who's done a lot of successful things and at that stage of my career, but I don't feel like that. I'm upstairs practicing the music that I'm going to do next week, so I feel like I'm sort of in the middle of or early part of a career. I know that's a little silly of me, but that's the way I feel musically. So I feel very lucky to have played with great players and been around that. And most of all, I'm lucky to be able to share this thing. When we do concerts, I make records, but I love live concerts more than making records. Something magical happens between me and the audience, or between the band and the audience, and we all understand what that is, but we don't have the words in our language to actually explain what that is. And that's, when you think about it, that's a pretty special thing about music. So I'm lucky to be involved in that.
Mr. Adrian Belew, from the 70s to the Crimson Project, what main things do you feel have changed in you and what had remained the same?
Well, I think the music business itself has changed enormously in that time. When I started out, you had you had vinyl records, and then you had cassettes, then you had CDs, then you had so on. So the business itself changed. What happened for me personally is, of course, I had a lot of very fortunate encounters with people like David Bowie and King Crimson, all these different people. But I think the thing that I meant to do from the beginning of my musical life was to somehow make my own legacy of songs that I've written or things that I've co-written with other people, as in King Crimson or my solo records. And those things now seem to be well in place. You know, there's been enough time in my life that now I feel like I have a nice catalog of things that I'm I'm happy with, and I still have many, many, many new ideas.
Yes. Like many other young musicians of your generation, you were inspired by Jimi Hendrix. Please tell me about the Hendrix factor.
Well, Jimi Hendrix was the guy that came along and showed that you could do something else with a guitar.
Yes.
Up to that point, electric guitar had been played in a variety of ways, but mostly, you know, apart from some jazz players and a few players here and there, it was pretty standard stuff. Jimi Hendrix showed that you could take the guitar and make it something entirely different. When I started playing guitar, it was to be a songwriter. And about the same time, then Jimi Hendrix and Jeff Beck and Eric Clapton and all the great guitarists of the 60s finally arrived. And that inspired me to want to be more than just a songwriter, to want to try my hand at doing unusual things with guitar. Yes. I think Jimi Hendrix was the guy who made the guitar sound like new things, and that inspired me.
In your hands, the guitar is always a fascinating display of sonic effects and emotions. Mr. Adrian Belew, tell me about this unique feeling to reveal your spiritual world through your instrument, the guitar.
Well, I've always seen the instrument guitar as just a vehicle for anything you want to do.
Yes.
And so over my lifetime, one of the things I've liked to try to do is make it do things it's not supposed to do. You make it sound like a drum or an orchestra or an animal or, you know, a car, or
yes.
as well as making it sound like a guitar. So I've really enjoyed that process. I seem to be very good at analyzing sound and then taking that information and figuring out how to make that happen on guitar. And from the very beginning of teaching myself to play guitar, I realized that in order to find something that was my own, I would have to find something that no one else was doing. And when I realized that I enjoyed making the guitar sound like things, and no one else much seemed to be making it sound like an elephant, so I did.
You've toured and appeared on Zappa's 1979 album Shake Your Booty, and also on the concert with Baby Snakes.
Mm-hmm.
What memories do you have today about the Frank Zappa chapter?
Oh, I have, I feel very fortunate. I have a whole movie in my mind that I can play of the way that Frank held his cigarette, the way he said things, all the events and things that happened. It was only 1 year of my life, but it was packed with information. Up to the point that I met Frank, I had taught myself everything. So he was really my first teacher. I like to say that I graduated from the school of Zappa music. And he really was generous to me and took me under his wing and taught me a lot of things. And a lot of the things that he taught me were not just about the music, but how to be a professional touring artist, how to travel, how to make records, how to make a film, how to run a business.
Yes.
So those were all things that at that time in my life were very, very important to me. Of course, being in Zappa's company and the people that he surrounds himself with, it was crazy. There was lots of crazy fun going on. But for me, it was a very important time because it was a time where I finally made a transition into being a professional musician.
Yes. After the Zappa experience, David Bowie hired you in 1978
Mm-hmm.
For the Heroes Tour. You've also recorded with Bowie for his albums Stage and Lodger.
Mm-hmm.
12 years later, in 1990, you've returned for Bowie's Sound and Vision Tour as music director while also playing guitar and singing. How was it for you to play and record with David Bowie?
Well, I was wondering when he'd call me again, you know, because I really enjoyed working with him so much, and I thought we got along really well the first time around. And we worked together with Brian Eno, and that seemed like a very artistic combination. When he called again in 1990, it was very different because I think David wanted to have sort of a friendship, and he wanted to be able to travel around the world with people he trusted and knew. And so that's what we did. So the second time around with David, I felt like I got to be a part of his life and his a part of mine, and we got to be friends. And you know, we went to 27 countries. We stayed all over the world. We ate lots of food together and had lots of fun experiences. Went to museums, and of course played over 100 concerts. So the second time in 1990 was the time that I remember a little more fondly, because I felt like I got to know him.
Yes.
I've always loved David. He's a brilliant artist.
A few words about the Talking Heads chapter.
Talking Heads chapter was somewhat like the David Bowie chapter to me, because as a musician I was being asked to just go wild on guitar, and it was a real pleasure to play that to their music, because David music always has a groove, and so does Talking Heads. So it was easy and fun for me, not complicated like Zappa music or King Crimson music would be later. The other thing about working with Talking Heads is it was right when they were starting to become stars. The band started to become very famous. And so I was right there watching that whole thing happen, riding around the world while that was happening with them. And that was fascinating too. So I had just finished working with a superstar, David Bowie, and then I was all of a sudden watching a new star rise, the Talking Heads.
Yes. Your solo career started in 1981. In the same year, you agreed to join King Crimson. You were the singer, guitarist, frontman, and occasional drummer for King Crimson from 1981 to 2009. How would you define your King Crimson chapter?
Well, I would define that as a very, very important part of my life and my legacy musically. It was a band that was meant to challenge music, challenge concepts, do something new. You know, I had a very important relationship with Robert Fripp as guitarist and as songwriter partners. King Crimson was a band for me before I was in the band that I loved dearly. So it was a very big challenge to be a part of the band. Very rewarding, and I loved it. And I think when I look back at all of it, I'm very proud of what we were able to do, and it's music that I'm playing still.
Yes.
You know, when I started with King Crimson, I also wanted to make sure that I could have a solo career, because I knew that King Crimson would be a group effort, and I knew that I also had thoughts in mind that would be more for me only.
Yes.
And so I started both careers at the same time, and they both have done well and still continue.
How it is to work with someone like Robert Fripp?
There is no one else like Robert Fripp. So Robert, you know, has always been generous to me in terms of wanting my ideas and encourage me to give him, you know, songs to play and things to do. Other than that, I think he's a very difficult person for a lot of people to work with. But for me personally, not as much, because he and I have grown a very good friendship over all these years. Sometimes it is difficult because you have his way of dealing with people is unique, and my way of dealing with people is more, I think, more direct. I would just tell you what I think, but he sort of makes you have to think about it too much. But I still think, you know, we made a great partnership, and I'm very happy about it.
What is the essence of the Crimson Project?
The essence of the Crimson Project is simply to go out and play Crimson music authentically, and to sort of celebrate that music.
Yes.
3 years ago, in 2011, I realized it was the 30th anniversary for myself and Tony Levin joining King Crimson. And Tony and Pat and I were working together at the time, and I thought, well, we're the only 3 guys left in King Crimson at that time who are still playing King Crimson music. Why don't we go and play this music for people? Because I felt it needed to be celebrated. I knew that Robert didn't want to do any more touring. And so the first thing I did, of course, was call Robert, and he named the band for us. So it had his full support. And I think it turned into much more than anyone thought. I figured that we'd probably do Crimson Project for maybe 1 tour. But we've been touring all around the world with it because there are a lot of fans who still want to hear this music, and we are the people who had a hand in making it.
Yes. You are one of the progressive rock and experimental rock symbols. How do you see the evolution of the progressive rock scene now in 2014?
Well, I'm glad to say I think it's healthier than ever. It seems to have come alive again with bands like, you know, Tool and Porcupine Tree and so many other bands, and there are many more. But it's interesting to me that for a long time it seemed like that form of music was dormant. And even King Crimson in the 80s when we started, I didn't feel we were a progressive rock band anymore. I felt like we were a new take. But when we settled back in again the second time, which was in 1993, I believe, it started feeling like progressive rock music again with us, because we had large epic type music like Dinosaur and Thrack and songs that reminded me, if not in the sound, in the form of the early King Crimson stuff. So I'm glad to see, though, that there is you know, a great audience for all of that kinds of music, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
So how would you describe your collaborations with 9 Inch Nails and Porcupine Tree?
Well, mostly with the people I play with on their records. They come to me for something unique. They expect me to do something that they wouldn't think of, or something they can't do. In the case of Trent Reznor, for example, this is pretty much the same with everyone I play with now on records. He'll play a track for me and say, is there anything you can think of that you'd like to play on this? Give me freedom to do that, and I will play different things and try different things, and then after I'm gone from our time together, then he can decide what he likes and what he doesn't like. The same thing happened with Porcupine Tree. They sent me their record to my studio. I never even met them at that time. I know them now, but I didn't meet them then. And they just let me go wild. I think that's kind of the way things work best for me on other people's music. I don't like to be confined, and I don't really need to, if they want to get someone to play exactly what they want, they can hire people who are probably better at that than me.
Which solo album that you've done is the most representative of how you would like to be known as a musician?
The one that I'm finishing now, which is called Flux, which is not even an album, but it's a collection of all kinds of music and things. It'll be coming out soon. I guess if I go back to records I've already made, I always liked Mr. Music Head, and I liked Side 2 a lot, Young Lions. But, you know, they're all my children, so it's hard to pick your children. It's hard to say I prefer this one over that. It's interesting. I was just looking through a list of all the music that I've written because I'm planning my touring for the fall with my power trio, so I'm looking at what music we might play. And when I look at all of it, I feel like it's all together. The same way I think Frank felt about his music. It's all one thing. So
one big thing.
Yeah, it's one big thing. It's your legacy. It's the way you view music, the way you view the world. It's your art, and it's the way that information comes to you and you give back information. And so it's hard to say one thing is better than another, because I think they're all valid.
Yes. You have a great passion for art. Your abstract ideas and emotions are always perfectly captured in your paintings. Like your music, your paintings always signifies the joy of being creative, experimenting, trying new things, finding and reaching new horizons, perhaps.
I think what you've said is exactly what I would answer if you ask me what it is about art that I love. It's very much like making music.
Yes.
It uses the same creative aspects, very much like, you know, producing a record or creating a piece of music or a song. Painting is you put sounds on the canvas, and then if you don't like that, you change it. Then you finally at some point say, there it is, you know.
You put your soul.
Yes, and it's very much the same for me in another sense, in that, as I said, for the most part, I'm completely self-taught. Everything that I do, I've taught myself. And it's exactly the same with painting.
Yes.
I've never had a single person ever tell me how to do anything.
Yes.
And what I like to do with painting is kind of let it do things and make something out of it. And that's very similar to what I like to do in music. Let music kind of come to me and then make something out of it.
What is, in your vision, the essence of music, of art in general, the meaning of it? Yes.
Well, I think art is all about self-expression. You know, it's you trying to communicate something to someone. When it's done through music, it's done for the joy of it. And when it's done for art, it's done for the visual impact of it. And, you know, but I think the bottom of all of it is heart. It's soul. It's, you know, something inside me makes me have to create.
Yes.
I'm not happy when I'm not creating something. And so that's how I've spent my life.
Besides music, what things are important in life to you?
Well, of course, all the people I love and know, and I think everything's important. I mean, the world is important. I think mankind is important. We all need to learn how to love each other and how to be the same human race together. Little things are important to me. I think sometimes just the smallest little thing. For example, I just walked down the road here by the hotel we're staying at. Beautiful lake, beautiful woods, and for me that just made me feel wonderful. It was just 5 minutes, but it made me feel great. It's little things like that. Nature, you know, things that kind of touch your heart, or fun things. Laughter. I think being funny and enjoying funny things is very important to a human being.
Yes. How would you describe the contemporary American spirit?
Well, I will tell you this. I'm not the person to really describe it very well, because I've kept myself sheltered from what goes on in the mainstream world. I don't watch much television in America because some of it seems pretty stupid to me nowadays.
And you are not interested in politics?
I'm not interested in politics, no, I'm not. I spend my time trying to keep my mind on what I'm doing creatively. And then, of course, I have a very busy career. I have a family, so I want to spend as much time with them as I can. But I'm not one of these people that knows what current affairs are going on. I kind of stopped doing that. I don't know, about 20 or 30 years ago, I realized, well, I didn't like it much. Every time I turned on the news, it seemed like it was all horrible things. So I thought, well, I don't really need that, and I can't change it by watching it. So I'd rather do things that give me more of an artful existence. You know, read things that I like to read, or see a great movie, or walk beside a lake, or...
Yes. What is it, as you go forward, that you try to achieve?
To fill the rest of my legacy. I still have a lot of musical thoughts and ideas and things I want to try. And there's a few more steps up the ladder that I'd like to go. I'm very happy with what I've been able to do.
Yes.
Lucky and fortunate. Yes, and I know that. So what I want to do now is just spend as much time doing more and more of it, because I love it. I love playing for people. I have a great fan base around the world. I love making art. I love making music. I love songwriting. I love to sing. Ever since I was a little boy, I've loved to sing. So I just think now all I have to do is take care of myself and enjoy the rest of my life doing the same things I'm doing now.
Mr. Joey DeFrancesco, from the 70s to your latest tour and Enjoy the View album, how would you describe your journey through music and life?
Well, that's what I do. I've been playing music my whole life, and it's a wonderful thing, and I'm lucky to do it, and I'm happy to do it, and it just gets more and more exciting all the time with all the new things that are happening with technology and with music, and it's a great journey.
Yes. You began playing the organ at the age of 4. How was it for you to play later with your mentor, the legendary Jimmy Smith?
It was incredible. I mean, he meant so much to me. I learned so much. It was a huge influence on me when I started playing. And then to know these guys were huge stars to me, you know, and to be able to be around them with Jimmy Smith or Jack McDuff or Jimmy McGriff, all the guys, I knew them and played with them. And I was very fortunate, and it was a great experience, and there's nothing like it. It felt great.
Yes. Hammond organ is in fact a beautiful display of emotions. Unfortunately, this instrument is still ignored by some people. It is unbelievable what you did with this instrument. Thanks to you, the Hammond B3 is now a real straight-ahead instrument. It was probably a hard road.
Yeah, it still continues to be, because a lot of people don't. It's maybe in the last few years where it's been really taken seriously as a real jazz instrument. A lot of the records in the 60s, although very great, but maybe focused more on the blues or R&B side of the Hammond organ, where there was a lot of great straight-ahead jazz. Jimmy Smith was a great straight-ahead. Don Patterson, Jack McDuff, they were doing a lot of great things, but the more recognizable thing for the organ was the bluesier kind of, which is great, but there's so much more to the organ. And now, when I came on the scene in the early 90s, I made a strong effort to make people understand that, yes, there's a tradition of blues and funkiness of the organ, but there's also a tradition that needs to move forward with very serious improvised music with the instrument, and that's what I continue to try to do. And there's a lot of organ players following my footsteps in that direction now.
How was it for you to record and play with Miles Davis? From what I understood, Miles was reputed to be someone who gave minimal instructions.
Yeah, because he hired you because he already liked you. There's little things he would tell you.
Yes.
But to be around him, somebody like that, and just to talk to him about all the experiences and people and music that he was involved with.
Yes.
He was the history, and it was wonderful. And Miles was really good to me, and because of Miles, I started to play the trumpet, you know, and he gave me mouthpieces and his mutes and things like that, and that's why I still play the trumpet, you know.
Yes. What is, in your vision, the essence of the trumpet's sound?
The essence of the trumpet sound is, I think, for me, my favorite trumpet sound is coming from Miles, the way his sound. But his sound was a combination of influences too, like Louis. It starts with Louis Armstrong, you know, that sound, and you know, Clark Terry and Lee Morgan. I mean, these are the kind of sounds I like. So I try to play my own ideas, but I'm very heavily influenced by this. So a lot of people say, you sound like Miles Davis, whatever. That's okay, because that's what I'm listening to. That's what I'm hearing, you know. But never anybody will ever sound like Miles Davis.
What is the essence of your current trio? Is the trio the ideal formula for you?
Yeah, well, I'm interested now in actually adding a bass player, not for everything, because it's important when you play the Hammond organ that you play bass line. That's part of the technique of the instrument. But because I like to play the trumpet, it makes it a little easier to stand up and play. And also I've been more involved in playing more piano and some electronic, some synthesizers and things like that. So if I have a bass added, it makes it easier for me to do more things. And I wouldn't mind having another horn too, a saxophone. So I love the trio, but I'm hearing other instruments now, so probably next time they see me, that's what I'll have.
Yes. You've stated that spirituality is an important element in the music playing experience. What happens in jazz between the performer and the audience that forms a bond?
Well, first of all, you never play thinking you're going to play something to please the audience. You have to be true to yourself, the musicians on the stage. Because if you're doing that, then the audience is getting a better experience because they're coming to see you paint a picture, right? So if you can't paint a picture thinking what they want to see, it's art, so you have to do it your way. And hopefully you're sharing this with the audience and they could come in with you. And if that happens, which it does 99% of the time, it's a wonderful experience.
What would you like your musical legacy to show?
That I was true to myself, that I never did anything musically that I didn't want to do. I did everything that I do things that I like to do, and that I have a very open and creative mind to explore all different possibilities of music, not just, one thing,
How would you describe the contemporary American jazz scene and culture in general, and maybe the American society?
Well, I mean, that's a big question. I mean, jazz scene is, I think it's getting stronger. There's a lot of people coming up playing, younger people interested in studying hard to be great musicians and have a lot of natural ability. I'm American, and I love my country, but, there's things about it that it's amazing that most of the things you'd have to do a lot of times are not in your country. You come to Europe, you come to places here, you go to Japan, and you go to, a lot of times, even in Canada, just north of us in America, there's a huge appreciation for our culture, more so than there is in a lot of cases in the States. And but it's getting better. There's still a lot of places to play. There used to be more, and now things are starting to come around again. So, that's. But I don't want to say anything bad about where I'm from either. But that's the truth.
Yes. What music lifts your spirit?
There's something I can't say specifically. I like all kinds of music. And if there's a particular thing that I hear in any particular genre or style and it moves me, I like it. So I can't really, there's something in all styles.
Yes. And my final question is, what is it as you go forward that you try to achieve artistically and creatively?
To continue to move forward, it's a very slow process, to change. And I just want to keep getting more harmonically sophisticated, learning more things from other styles and other music and things like that. And hopefully continue to be innovative and move forward with the instrument in a little bit different manner.